All right, let's take a look at how our market's been functioning as of June 26, 2023. So overall in Fairbanks, our market's looking pretty healthy. We're sitting with a pending ratio of about 58.3%, which is moving pretty good. Where you've got about 100 active homes on the market and 140 pending homes on the market as well. So again, we're moving pretty quickly. So this, along with about 264 homes sold in the past 6 months, gives us 1.1 months of inventory. So if we were to stop taking homes on the market today, we should run out of homes in about 34 days. As you've heard Brandon Phillips talk about in the past, a balanced real estate market should be anywhere between 4 to 6 months worth of inventory, and that buyers controlling anywhere above 6 months of inventory and sellers controlling, negotiating ground anywhere under 4 months of inventory. We've been in under 4 months of inventory for a few years, ever since the pandemic of 2020. The average original list price that we're seeing in Fairbanks is right around $302,961, and the final price that these homes were listed in when they went under contract averaged about $295,964. However, when they sold, homes in the last 6 months averaged a final sales price of $290,703. So when all was said and done, home sellers were taking the home at around 98.22% of what they were asking for, which is still pretty good. And this is pretty consistent with what we see year over year in Fairbanks and North Pole. So those 264 homes that sold in the last 6 months in Fairbanks have sold in an average of 34 days on market, whereas the 100 homes that are currently on the market have been sitting there for an average of 78 days. Keep in mind, we're talking about averages, so they are going to be skewed pretty heavily by outliers. So there are going to be some homes that have been there for a lot longer than 78 days, but there are also going to be homes that have been there that have just hit the market too. So let's take a look at North Pole as well. In North Pole, the market's looking very healthy as well. We're also sitting at around 62% at 61.88% pending ratio. So with 61 active listings on the market and right at 100 homes currently under contract, this, along with the 101 homes that sold in the past 6 months, gives an inventory of 1.19 months of inventory, which is, again, moving very, very quickly. Still pretty deep in a seller's market. So things are moving pretty quickly in North Pole. Another good, healthy sign, which is great. The average original list price in North Pole is a little bit higher than it is in Fairbanks. So we're sitting about $338,000, $338,793. Final price that they were listed at when they went under contract was at $331,031. However, when they sold, homes in the last 6 months averaged a final sales price of $327,574. So all in all, sellers are still taking home 98.86% of what they're asking for in North Pole. And again, this is how our market typically functions. We're not seeing buyers writing offers that are super low. They're typically writing offers that are right around what sellers are asking for. Those 191 homes that sold in the last 6 months sold in an average of 47 days, whereas the 61 homes that are currently on the market right now have been there for about 63 days. Typically, I'd have discussed, and Brandon does this as well, we would have broken down our market trend report and shown you the hot price ranges where if you own a home that might be priced in one of those price ranges, it would be super advantageous to get on the market right now if you were considering selling, because there's several price ranges where there's just no homes on the market and your chances of getting sold are just super high. Being that we are in the sixth, we're at the end of the 6th month of 2023, I figured it might be advantageous to take a look at how our market's been functioning over the past 6 months. Getting a good idea of where we've been gives us a really good idea of where our market might be going. So again, looking back at how our market's been functioning over the past 6 months in terms of our active and our pending homes, you see that as the half has gone on, especially in June, up until June, we've been pretty stable with our active numbers. Sitting between 76 and 82 homes on the market. And then in June, we've kind of catapulted up to 100 in Fairbanks, which is pretty typical of what we see year over year in Fairbanks. Typically what ends up happening is we see a big rise in, starting in March. We see a rise in March and April and May, and in June it picks up even more. And July, it'll start to level off a little bit. We'll get like a little bit of a plateau. August might dip a little bit more. Towards the end of August, we might see a little bit of a spike. And in September, it should kind of taper down a little bit. October, it might come down a little bit more. And November and December, it'll come down to kind of the lowest part, and it'll stay that low in through January. And February, it'll start to rise a little bit more. And then March, it'll start to pick back up the following year. That's how it typically goes year over year. So I would be surprised if things went differently this year, even though we're in kind of a different economy than we have year over year in the past. So you'll notice that we see a pretty similar trend when it comes to our pending homes as well. So we saw 77 homes pending in January, 74 in February, 88 in March. Then in April, we start our seasonal climb. Again, we're hitting that 128 in May and then 140 in June. Things are picking up just as they do every season. So you sellers out there that are under contract or have been since maybe early May and you're working on trying to get repairs done and you just can't find contractors and you're wondering what the problem is, well, here's the problem. We've got 140 pendings in June right now. There's 100 pendings in North Pole as well. We're sitting at 240 plus pending transactions between Fairbanks and North Pole. All of them are looking to try to get some repairs completed, and we're running out of contractors to get them done. So the season is the reason that you're not getting any repairs done. So our pending ratios have been pretty stable through the last half, but we did see a 10% jump from April, pushing into about 61%, and we finished the half at right around 58.33%. So we're still cooking really, really fast. A healthy, good pending ratio it has been in the past at right around 33%, and we're nearly double that. So 2/3 nearly of the homes in Fairbanks that are on the market are currently pending. So if you're a buyer and you're like, well, why is it that it seems like there's nothing on the market? Because everything that's on the market is just going pending. I was talking with a buyer last night. We were discussing looking at scheduling a showing for a home this evening. Or when I went to go schedule the showing this morning, wouldn't you know it, that home went pending last night. So again, if you are a buyer and you're buying in this market, you need to come prepared. You cannot show up on day one ready to play without a pre-approval and without being ready to go see homes when other buyers aren't ready. So that means looking at homes during the day when other buyers are at work. You need to be ready to do it when other buyers aren't doing it. As far as month of inventory goes, for Fairbanks, we're down to about 33 days of inventory right now, whereas in January, as you can see in the graph here, we started at about 90 days of inventory. So we started at nearly 3 months of inventory at the first part of the year. And here we are looking at just about a month of inventory. So if you're worried about getting your home sold before the end of the summer, as long as you get your home on the market soon and you price responsibly, you should be able to get your home sold and meet your goal. Looking at the average sold prices in Fairbanks so far this year, it doesn't seem like there's been much movement, especially when we just focus on the numbers themselves. Looks like we're hovering right around $300,000 in terms of the average purchase price for homes across the board in Fairbanks, which is pretty nice considering when I got into real estate in 2015, I think the average purchase price for homes in Fairbanks was right around $225,000 to $240,000-ish. To be sitting here 8-9 years later and to be sitting at $75,000 more in home value is really, really nice, especially as a homeowner in Fairbanks. But for the most part, the sellers are still getting everything that they're asking for too. But the real star here is kind of the numbers between the numbers and the slight rising and falling of these numbers as they fluctuate with time. So for instance, in the first quarter, we saw home prices kind of take a little bit of a dip, around 2% of a dip actually. However, between May and June, in just those few months, we saw almost a 3% rise in Fairbanks, about a 4.56% rise in the average final list price, and a 4.81% rise in the average sold price when all was said and done. So this doesn't sound like much, again, looking at the month over month numbers and just looking at the numbers individually. And in theory, we should see some rise given that, or some rise in price given that we see many higher priced homes hitting the market in the summer versus hitting the market in the winter. And because these are averages, they are so susceptible to influence from outliers. So super high price listings versus super low price listings are going to skew these numbers quite a bit. So that's something that we have to consider with all of these average numbers. In looking at our months of inventory though, for the half, we see it slowly decreasing as the year goes on. Again, this is something that we should be expecting to see because we can count on more buyer activity happening over the summer than in the winter. Looking at our average days on market in Fairbanks, you can see that we're hovering right around 30 days on the market for everything that's sold, looking at the past 6 months for the previous 6 months. But the really cool thing about looking at it as a 6-month look back is that while we're looking at the homes that sold 6 months ago in January and doing this, we actually get to look back at kind of a year look back for this number or for these figures, because that number in January was calculating as far back as June of 2022. We can actually get a pretty representative number of the days on market looking back to a year ago from now. That's pretty cool when we're making pricing decisions today. So being that we've been all year for all of the active homes on the market, or I'm sorry, everything that's sold in the past year essentially has sold in an average of around the mid 30s or so in Fairbanks. That's pretty significant information to be able to use when making a price decision, because when you look at the homes that are currently active on the market all the way back, we're still hanging in there at around that 80 to 90 days on market. So what do you think is the reason for some homes selling twice or almost 3 times as fast in the winter apart from these other homes? What do you think? Drop me a line in the comments if you have an idea of what the reason might be. I think personally that it has a lot more to do with pricing than it does to do with marketing. Majority of the time, there's a lot of things that a lot of people are doing that are pretty similar. So there's not much that everyone's not doing. The one thing that the licensees in Fairbanks don't have control over for the most part is pricing. We can give all of the information, but ultimately the pricing decision lies with the sellers. A lot of times getting your home sold fast is more important than getting you to sign a contract for the highest listing price. Folks will tell sellers anything and everything that they want to hear in order to get their signature on a listing contract, but more often than not, telling you what you need to hear as opposed to what you want to hear is what's going to end up helping you get your home sold. Let's take a look at North Pole. In North Pole, we're seeing some really stable numbers. In terms of our active single-family homes, we're hovering right around the low 60s again. However, the big numbers to see here are the pending homes. North Pole started the year at 51 homes pending in January and increased to 58 in February. Then 78 in March, 84 in April, 100 in May, and then 99 again in June. So North Pole is maintaining a pretty healthy 61.88% pending ratio right now, which is, again, moving super fast. Both Fairbanks and North Pole are moving ridiculously quickly. Be sitting at a point where both markets are almost 2/3 pending ratio is awesome. We really want to be at like a 1/3, a 33% pending ratio. Be moving double fast is fantastic for sellers in both of these markets. Looking at our average days on market for everything that's sold in the last 6 months, just as we talked about with Fairbanks, we actually see an increase in days on market as the months go on, from 26 days in January to as high as 51 days in May, and then settling down to 47 days in June. Always see a decrease in the days on market for homes that are active on the market from 85 days in January to as low as 54 days in April, and then settling down to 63 days in June. All of this information is really good and it's great and all, but to get a really good idea of where we're going, as I said before, we really have to know kind of how our local real estate market and the national financial markets kind of work and function together. I think that if we just use this information to make a good pricing decision, that's one thing. But if we use this information to make a decision as to how and when and where to be buying in the future, I think that's when some of this information becomes really, really powerful, especially for buyers. If you're interested in possibly saving that, potentially thousands of dollars in listing your home in the next few years, I'd pay attention to the next video, and you can also always give us a call at 907-885-0316. You can also take a look at our website, fbxhomesearch.com. We're always here for you. Have a great day, Fairbanks.